Welcome, everybody. I'm Marc David, founder of the Institute for the Psychology of Eating. And here we are in the Psychology of Eating podcast. And I'm with Denise today. Welcome, Denise.
Hi, Marc. Thank you so much for having me.
I love your accent. Tell us where you're from.
Well, I was born in South Africa and I lived there for the majority of my life, but then spent 4 years in London and then went back to South Africa, met my husband there. He's from Zimbabwe and we did long distance for a year. And then I decided to move to Zimbabwe. So I've been here for 7 years now.
Wow. Good for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you tell me, if you can wave your magic wand and get whatever you wanted with food, with your body, what would be your big wish?
I feel I just struggle so much with my own body image. I look in the mirror every day and there's something that I will find that I don't like. And it's different every time. I mean, sometimes I go through stages where I'm super happy with how I look, but most of the time there's something that will aggravate me to the point that I then make stupid decisions around food or not sticking to my movement routine, which I absolutely love. And then it becomes like a vicious circle because, then I do gain weight or lose tone or something like that. And then, it's just this vicious circle. I think at the moment, my biggest struggle is my own body image. And then secondly is sticking to things that I decide to do. So, whether it be a different kind of movement routine or trying something new in terms of exercise, I'll do it for a little bit and then stop. Or if it's new recipes or a new way of eating, like I love vegetarian food, I will do it for a little bit and then it eventually stops. So those are my two things that I struggle with.
Mm-hmm. How long would you say you've been struggling with those?
Probably a good 10 years. I would say when I moved to Zimbabwe and with my, to be with my husband, and I'm a yoga teacher, I started teaching yoga at that stage. It was, around 7 years ago, it went through a better patch. So about 10 years ago, it kind of started. Then 3 years later, I felt good. I felt confident. I was moving properly. I was eating beautifully. I was happy. And then we had a baby in 2018. He's my beautiful son. He's 3.5. And we had some struggles with him just after he was born. So I wasn't able to focus on myself a lot. My entire focus was on him. And he had a lot of health concerns and everything for about a year. So I felt like I kind of lost touch with myself over that year. And it's been a struggle since then to kind of find myself again and be happy with myself.
Yeah. How old are you, Denise?
I'm 36.
36. So when you had your boy, you were about 33?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And are you looking to lose weight right now?
I am. I'm currently 71 kgs. And for me personally, I don't know what it is. I'm just so happy when I'm 65 kgs. And I know it's a number, but I just feel like for myself, when I see myself in the mirror, when I'm around that 65 kg mark, I'm so happy with myself. I'm happy with the way I look. I'm happy with the way I feel. I don't feel heavy. I feel content. And I struggle with that as well because I'm thinking, is this entirely in my mind that it's just weight related? Surely that's ridiculous. Life's not all about weight and what you weigh. It should be more than that. But for me, it is a huge deal. I just can't seem to get past that.
So in the times where you look in the mirror, you're not happy, and then you'll do things around eating that you wish you would not have done, what are some of those things that you'll find yourself doing with food that you wish you wouldn't have done? Can you just give me a little more detail?
So I love to kind of plan the week in terms of meals because I do all the cooking in the house. So I like to plan the meals for my family, my husband and my son. My husband's a big meat eater, and I'm not. My son loves his meat as well. So there initially is a bit of a struggle for me. I'm wanting to plan stuff around what we all like, but obviously we live in a country as well where access to different types of food is quite tricky and expensive. So I just struggle to I'll plan the week and then I struggle to stick to that plan. And as soon as I go outside of that plan, it's like I feel like the train has lost its rails. And I will turn to foods that are completely outside of that plan or completely not good for me. I'll turn to like biscuits or bread, or I'll even drive to the shops and buy a whole lot of sweets and biscuits and eat them in one sitting. It's not all the time. It doesn't happen often. But when it does, it's like I give up. So it'll be one meal that I've planned and I don't stick to, and I give up and I say, oh, well, we can start again next Monday.
Mm-hmm. Understood. So how often do you find yourself kind of going off the rails and eating in a way that you wish you wouldn't have? Like, what would you say? How many times a month does that happen?
I would say probably 3 or 4 times a week.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And when you do that, so you mentioned you might go for biscuits. What else? What are the foods that you go for that you feel, those are the foods I didn't want to eat?
It'll never be the healthy stuff. I'll never turn to an apple or some strawberries or something like that. And yet my fridge is packed with that stuff. Mm-hmm. I will always turn to the cupboard that usually has my son's treats in, biscuits, sweets, just anything that's got that kind of, I would say, high sugar content. But I feel completely awful afterwards. It's like, I just feel it may hit the spot for a bit, but afterwards I feel awful. I hate myself.
Yeah, sure. So are you a stay-at-home mom these days?
Half and half. I've just started getting back into my teaching. I did start teaching again a year after he was born, but then last year, March, when COVID happened, obviously all the yoga facilities and gyms and, my private clients, we all decided to kind of stay away from each other. So only recently in the last month or so have I started teaching again, but it's not every day. So it'll be, maybe once during the week and then on a Saturday morning. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the time I am at home. I'm trying to either, do some studying, or I help sometimes with my husband's work. But it's at home, and my son will be at home when he's not at school.
And you're the primary caregiver. Do you have any help?
I do have help. I have a lovely lady named Joy, and she helps me, during the day. She's here to clean the house in the morning for me, and then she helps with my son in the afternoon if I'm teaching or if I've got work to do.
Mm-hmm. What would you say for you are your biggest sort of anxieties or stresses other than food, weight, eating, body?
I stress a lot about the state of this country and our future here. My hubby was recently, just before COVID happened, he had been offered a job in New Zealand. So we were literally about to go. Our application was in and everything. And then COVID happened and everything got shut down. Mm-hmm. So we're still in a little bit of a limbo state at the moment. They've said that the job is still there, but we've got to wait for borders to open. So, at the moment we're in this state where we don't know where we're going to be tomorrow. Anything can change at the drop of a hat. So that for me has been quite difficult to wrap my head around, because I'm very much a planner. I like to know, what's happening in the next month, not to not know. And living here in Zim, it is so stressful. I mean, the economy is up and down. It's, life is very expensive. You've got challenges every day around power outages, Wi-Fi outages, your cell phone not working, not being able to find a certain food in the shops, those sort of things that I'm not used to from where I grew up. But here it's quite a challenge.
Those are some big stressors. Here you are, you have basically a new family, and, we're human and we like stability, and you don't really have that right now where you live, or you can't feel that right now given the circumstances. And especially this last year and a half has been, so insane for so many people in so many different countries. So, my thought is I always look at, or most often look at, when we're eating something that we wish we didn't, and that there's always some good reason. And the first great move is to look at what are those reasons? What are those good reasons that are rooted in our inner world, our psychology? Perhaps those reasons are rooted in our biology sometimes, that we would do something that we say we don't want to do. And so when I'm listening to your story and your life and your patterns, I think to myself, so much of you reaching for the sugar or the biscuits or not the fruit and not the things that are, quote unquote, healthy for you, is because it helps you feel better momentarily.
Yeah.
And if it's something is helping me feel better momentarily, it means that there's things going on in my life, or some things going on in my life that, it's stressful, I'm anxious, I'm ungrounded, this doesn't feel good, what's going to give me some relief? So to my mind, food is helping you, like it does for so many of us, have some relief from stress and anxiety. So there's going to be a certain amount of stress just being a new mom. Just having a 3.5 year old, you're transitioning from it's just you, or it's just you and your husband. And all of a sudden you have this little creature, even though you love him, you got to take care of him, and it completely changes your life. And oftentimes for the first small number of years and longer for a lot of people, moms will often say, I never quite found my groove once I had my first child, second child, etc., because previously you had a groove. You had, here's my eating style, here's my exercise style. And all of a sudden you've got less time, you've got less attention, you might be more tired. There's so many factors that go into, wow, all my energy is going into, like so much of my energy is going into my son, going into being a mom, going into, doing the roles that you do in your family system. So that's a big change. And on top of it, COVID has kind of accelerated all of that. So just when I hear that, I think to myself, it makes perfect sense that you would turn to the food that you're turning to. And the reason why I'm emphasizing that for you is that part of you, I think, unwinding this is learning some of the lessons that it's trying to teach you, or learning some of the lessons that it's asking of you. In no particular order, I think one of those lessons that this whole experience of, I know what I'm supposed to eat, I know how I want to prepare things, and when I don't do it, I just say, screw it, and I end up eating more of what I don't want to do, and I end up feeling garbage about myself and not liking myself. So one of the lessons to learn is that when I make a mistake, or when I go down a road that I wish I didn't go down, or when I can't manage my emotions without turning to food, the lesson to be learned there is to minimize as best as humanly possible the self-attack. That's one thing that you actually have some control over.
Yeah.
So I'm starting not with, well, how do you not do emotional eating? How do you not turn to food for emotional regulation? To me, I would rather focus right now for you on how do you manage your experience once that happens? Because you mentioned the vicious cycle or circle. Okay, I eat something I don't want to eat. I feel bad about myself. And honestly, when we feel bad about ourselves, you want to do something that's going to make you feel better about yourself. And food makes me feel better about myself, especially the foods I'm not supposed to eat.
Yeah.
So the thing that you have some interesting say in is how you talk to yourself and how quickly you go from, I can't believe I did that. Let me just wait a bunch of days until I recalibrate, or I'm so bad, I'm so awful, I'm so terrible. Whatever the conversation is for you, that's what I would love to see you start to shorten that conversation. It's the same thing if you have a child and your child's not doing something perfectly, and your son is learning how to tie his shoes or put on his shorts or his pants, and he's not getting it, you're not going to attack him. You're not going to tell him to self-reject or to hate himself. You're going to give him a big hug. You're going to love him up. And you're going to love him into learning what he needs to learn, as opposed to smack him and spank him and speak ill to him because he's not doing something that you think he should be doing. So humans learn not by getting punished. However, we have that old pattern. You didn't invent that pattern. We all have it to some degree. Most people I meet have that pattern of, oh, damn, I didn't do that right. And then fill in the blank with all the negative self-talk. So what I want to say is I would love to see you treat you like you would treat your child.
Okay.
Now, when something is not working, you go into compassion mode, you go into love mode, you go into patience mode, you go into teaching mode. And even though you're upset at yourself for not getting it right with food in the moment, in a lot of ways, it's learning how to forgive yourself faster.
Yeah.
That's why I started talking about there's a good reason for why you're reaching for foods that don't ultimately work for you in the long run.
Yeah.
Because it's just helping you regulate stress and anxiety and tension in an uncertain world. It's also helping you regulate stress, anxiety, and tension being a new mom and trying to figure out, like, what is this going to look like for me? What's this going to look like for my body? So you're in an interesting transition zone. And what I want to say is, I don't know, and I really mean this. I don't know what the new body is for you for the next chunk of time. Because oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes what I've noticed with new moms is that their body changes. Giving birth to a human being, your body changes. It's pretty powerful. It's pretty intense. And do I meet moms who, give birth and then get right back into it and hit the exercise and hit the Pilates and hit the controlled diet? Sure, people do that. Oftentimes such women are not happy, or they're pushing extra hard. And, you mentioned, I feel better when I'm 65 kilos, and when I'm 70 or so, then when you're anything else. And I'm with you. People usually have their number, or oftentimes have a number, like, this is what I feel great at. And there's some reality to that, of course, because you have certain memories associated with being at that weight.
Yeah.
You have certain feelings that you've anchored in your body that are associated with that weight. There's just certain feelings, certain sensations, and certain memories that are associated with 65 kilograms. So nothing wrong with that. The challenge is, if we make that number, if you make that number, like, unless I hit that number, I will not be satisfied. Then we're in trouble, because then you have to hit that number in order to get back to a place where you can feel good about yourself, where you can feel satisfied, where you like yourself, and when you're not looking in the mirror and kind of screaming at yourself. So, we know if you look around you, there are people of all sizes and shapes who are actually happy. There really are. I spent a lot of time in Africa. I spent a lot of time in South Africa. A lot of the people native to South Africa, they got big bodies, a lot of the women, and they're happy. They're smiling all the time. They could care less.
Yeah.
And it's a great role model for us. It's an interesting one to observe, because it's just proof that the number doesn't necessarily matter. And part of your task, I think, is to begin to give yourself a little more spaciousness.
Yeah.
And especially spaciousness around your number. I'm not making your number wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong about that. That's not what I'm doing. I'm saying you're right about that in many ways. I've been at that number. Here's the feelings associated with it. Here's the memories associated with it. I could easily tell you, when I had more money in the bank, I was happier. So does that mean, oh my God, unless that number gets back to the same place, then I'm not going to be happy anymore? No. How do I be happy with what I got now?
Yeah. So
that's called you and I growing up and maturing, really, is what it is. In a lot of ways, you're going from young princesshood, like the archetypal princess stage, where, when you're not married, when you're not in a relationship, and or you don't have a child, it's kind of about me.
Yeah.
It's me. I can control my food, my exercise, what I do, where I go. We can be so specific, and it's great. And you're in a stage where, in my languaging, you're in the late princess stage, where you're becoming a more mature young woman, because you're a mother, because you're a wife, you're a partner, you're in relationship with another human being, sort of till death do you part. So those are all amazing step ups in the world.
Yeah.
And the body is not always going to cooperate with our standards that previously you could reach, because you had the time and the energy and the inclination and the youth on your side. And it doesn't mean you can't get back there, but it means that right now, I would just love to see you dial down the self-attack. I really think that's step one, learning how to forgive yourself, practicing how to just stand by yourself, just like you would stand by your son when he's learning how to walk and he falls down. You don't smack him, you don't spank him, you hug him.
Yeah.
So right now you're learning how to be in a new body. You are learning how to be with uncertainty and stress in a whole different way, because it's not just you anymore. It's you, your son, your husband, and you guys as a tribe.
Yeah.
So how did all that land for you? What are you thinking right now?
I love the way you put that, because it's also what I try and teach to my students and my clients when I'm teaching them yoga. And, I always go into especially if they're in a pose that it's not comfortable. I say to them, what's going on in your head right now? How's the self-talk? How's that going on? Are you moving through discomfort? Are you resisting discomfort? And yet I say all of that to my own students and my own clients, and I never say that to myself. And yet that's what I need to do, essentially. And it's amazing. My husband always says that to me. He always says, you always say this to everybody else and you never actually do it or say it to yourself. And it's true. I need to do that to kind of move past this. It is very much a self-attack, and it's unnecessary, at this stage of my life. There are more important things, I think.
Bingo. It's such a great analogy, because if I was your yoga student and I'm in a posture and I'm stiff and I can't do the posture as good as everybody else around me, and I start going into self-rejection and blame, then great, this is what the yoga practice is for. It's learning how to be with where you're at.
Yep.
So what are the little micro adjustments you can make, not only in your body, so you're not pushing yourself too hard, but what are the little micro adjustments I make in my mind?
Yeah.
And, Denise, I think what you've identified is, again, what so many human beings have to look at, is that oftentimes we're teaching what we need to learn. There's nothing wrong with that. The good news is, these principles, them. And in a weird way, that they work because you've seen it work with your students.
That's the frustration around it. It works, but you don't apply it in your own life.
Yeah. So that, I think, is the growing edge for you, is learning how to do this for yourself.
Yeah.
And you can literally pretend that you are one of your students. And there's the part of you that's the teacher, and there's the part of you that's literally the student that's having some struggles and having some trouble. And you're in the yoga posture called, emotions and eating. And if we get too uncomfortable in that posture called emotions and eating, then we're going to want to eat to regulate our emotions. So how do I breathe? How do I adjust myself? And even if you do end up eating, if you do end up emotionally eating, how do you stay present with yourself?
Yeah.
That's something I would also love to see you practice. If you're going to go for biscuits, if you're going to go for the sugar, I really want you to stay awake when you're doing it. Because what happens is, if the mind considers that bad, this thing I'm about to do bad, I have put in so much time and energy to not do it, and now I'm doing it. So the thing I'm doing is bad, which makes me a bad person. So if I'm doing something bad and I'm a bad person, what's going to happen is I'm going to want to do it as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
It's almost as if we're in criminal mind. I'm going to want to do it as quickly as possible. And one of the ways to do it as quickly as possible is a part of us checks out when we're eating something that we think we shouldn't eat. And when we check out, we're not fully in our body. We're not fully present. It's just like being in a yoga posture and you're thinking about, I don't know, a movie that you want to go see or that you just saw, and you're going over the movie in your head, and you're not doing yoga. You're thinking about movie.
Yeah.
So there's a part of you that's going to go a little bit dark, unconscious, not present, not embodied, when you're reaching for the quote unquote bad foods or things you think you shouldn't do. And it will often cause us to eat more because we're not present, or it will actually invite in more guilt. So if you and I stay more present, when you do the thing that you said you didn't want to do, okay, here's me. I'm eating these biscuits. You know something? Let me take a deep breath. I'm going to eat the biscuits. Let me take a deep breath. Let me sit down and let me eat it slowly and let me enjoy it and let me actually get the thing that I'm wanting to get out of it, which is a little bit of pleasure and a little bit of, stress regulation and emotional regulation. Now, it doesn't mean that that's going to be a lovely experience. It might be sometimes. You might just go, oh, these biscuits are not so bad. I'm not such a bad person. And, I could have biscuits every once in a while. It's not going to kill you.
Yeah.
But by staying awake, you are more present to yourself. And you're going to get more information about yourself. And you're going to gather more wisdom about the moment by staying present, even when you know you're about to do something that you don't want to do. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it really, really does. And I feel, there's almost that disconnect when you're not present and you're just going with it. There's that complete disconnect, and that in itself can create stress for yourself. So I completely understand what you're saying, is to just create that kind of connection with yourself, and whatever that connection is, just connect.
Yes.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, the more present we are, the more powerful we are. An unpresent person is not very powerful. Chances are, if you have a friend who, whenever you're with them, is never present with you, they're always on their cell phone, they're never really paying attention to the conversation, it's not going to be a very powerful relationship. It's not going to be a powerful connection. You're not going to have very powerful conversations.
Yeah.
There's not going to be intimacy there. So presence is power, presence is intimacy. And that power and that intimacy are both energy to help you in the long run learn how to make choices for yourself that work. Sometimes being present is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Once again, back to yoga, there's so many simple yoga postures that personally make me very uncomfortable. And I got to stay really present to myself because I want to check out.
Yeah.
So it's learning to play that edge with yourself.
Yeah.
And pretend that your relationship with food is like a yoga posture.
Find the comfort in the discomfort. That's what I always say.
Yes. There you go. Yeah, you're way ahead of the game here because you really understand. So you understand from a bodily perspective when it comes to postures.
Yeah.
And all I'm asking you to do is begin to apply what you know about your body from postures and from yoga and the wisdom that you know there, and start to apply it to this other aspect of your body, which is your relationship with food.
Yeah. When you put it like that, it seems so logical, but at the time it is tricky.
100%. Because at the time you're in all your emotions. Yeah. At the time we're going to be in upset, confusion, self-rejection. You're going to be in a certain kind of chaos. Mm-hmm. And when we're in that chaos of, oh my God, I don't know what's happening, there's all these emotions here, that's when you go to the tools that work. And what works in discomfort, what works in chaos is breathing, right? Is just, okay, let me just slow down and take a breath and center myself.
Yeah.
And even in that, but you have to remind yourself. That's why there's a teacher in the yoga class, because that teacher is reminding everybody, okay, are you being present? Are you breathing? What's your mind doing? If your mind is wandering, bring it back. Focus on your posture.
Yeah.
Focus on your experience. Focus on the sensation in your body. So there's always that voice that's in a yoga class, that voice that's calling people back into presence.
Yeah.
So you're learning how to cultivate that voice for yourself.
Sure.
And I'm going to tell you, Denise, there's really no shortcuts here.
Yeah.
I've looked for them, you know, and there's plenty of people out there that promise, you know, I don't know what, fast results when it comes to weight loss or whatever it is. But really, there's no fast, sustainable results because we're being asked to grow.
Yeah.
And growth takes time. You know, you can be with your son and say, you know, I want a son that could do advanced mathematics right now. And I'm sorry, it's going to take some time. We're not there yet. So it's going to take some time for you to get to the place where you feel more free. It could be 5 months. It could be years. It could be, who knows? But as long as you do the tools that you know, the journey is going to be a lot more interesting, and it's going to be a lot more pleasurable. It's going to be a lot more rewarding, I think. And you're going to get where you want to go faster.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true, because the minute you kind of put a time limit on it, then you're already setting yourself up for possible disappointment.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
It does take work. And that's where, again, like I was saying in the beginning, where I do struggle is sticking to something. But the way you kind of put it in relation to how I would nurture and nourish my son, that kind of love and patience, you know, before you know it, your child's 3.5 and it feels like yesterday that he was born.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe it's just that shift for me to do that for myself.
I think it'll be huge. I think it'll be huge, you know, not only in your relationship with food and with your own body, but just for you as a person to take away the urgency and to start to take away the conditions that we place on our weight. Meaning this, unless I'm at 65 kilograms, I'm not going to like myself. Because at 65 kilograms, I love myself. Everything's great. So, let me do the math. If I'm not there, then everything is not great.
Yeah.
And so we actually set up a self-fulfilling prophecy of, I'm not happy right now and I can't be happy and I can't be who I'm supposed to be because I'm not at this number.
Yeah.
That I promise you, your son could care less. And I'm guessing your husband doesn't care either. He's probably happy with where you are. Is that true?
Yeah. He always says to me, you don't understand. Because I'll go on about my weight or something, and he just shakes his head. He's like, honestly, he doesn't even have a comment. He just shakes his head, and he often says to me, I wish you could see yourself through my eyes.
Mm-hmm. And he's right. You know, I have more language than he does around this just because this is my field and this is what I'm interested in. But I find that that's how the majority of men are in relation to girlfriends, wives, partners who, you know, the guy feels like, hey, I don't have an issue here. Like, relax, let's just have fun. And the woman is, you know, wanting to look a certain way, and men usually don't have a language for that. But I think it's really, you know, such a sweet statement for him to say, you know, I wish you could see yourself through my eyes. And that's interesting in a strange way. You know, sometimes if we can't love our own bodies, it's nice to get help. It's nice to have somebody around you that actually is loving your body more than you do. So really part of that is also learning that and noticing that. Like just literally noticing that you have a human being in your environment, a man in your environment that loves you and cares about you and isn't putting conditions on your body.
Yeah.
and he's not putting conditions on you. Thank goodness, because that would be awful if he was putting conditions on you. Honey, I am not going to love you until you get down to 60 kilograms. So it's learning to model after that, to absorb that, to appreciate it, to be grateful for it more.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hear that message so often. So often. It's just gratitude for the good, and to not harp on about the not so good.
Yeah. And once again, that's a practice. Just like going to yoga class 2 or 3 times a week, that's a practice. Yeah. Just got to show up and spend an hour and do some postures. And this is the same thing. Gratitude is a practice, because right now you're never going to be this young. And tomorrow you're going to be a day older, so you will never be this young.
Yep.
Your health is going to change, maybe in better ways. Maybe you're going to, shrink your body more and shape shift it in the way you want it to go. And there's this place where, now's the time to enjoy yourself as best you can, and just remind yourself that.
Yeah. So true.
Right? So when you do find yourself turning to food that you don't like or that you think is on the bad list, again, I want you to see if you can make a choice once you know that you're going to do it. Once it's game on, once it's happening, I would really love for you to play with, can I choose to do this thing that I'm going to do anyways right now? So take responsibility in the moment, meaning I'm doing this. You know something? Let me start out with 3 biscuits and eat slow, eat relaxed, enjoy them. Yeah, if I want another, I'll have another. And if you want another after that, you can have another, but it's staying present.
Yeah.
And choosing to do the thing that you're going to do anyways.
Okay.
And you'll see it's going to gradually give you more power, more information about yourself. And then afterwards, even if you're feeling bad about yourself, or when you're feeling bad about yourself, ask yourself, how can I forgive me in this moment? What if I was my son and he was having this struggle? How would I treat him? I'd love him up. I'd give him a big hug. I'd encourage him. I wouldn't want him wasting any time in self-attack and self-rejection.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And, now that you put it that way, when I think back to the times that I have gone to foods that I automatically label as bad, I know, like when I think about that time, I'm never actually present.
Yeah.
It's not like when you sit down and eat a delicious meal with your family and you're there. It's always in this kind of frame where it's just happening. You don't even know what's going on. So I completely can see how that could possibly create a shift.
Yes. And it's key to you getting where you want to go, because it means that you're finding consciousness, you're finding light, you're finding awareness in a place where we usually go dark.
Yeah.
So when we wake up in that moment, it doesn't mean that you stop doing it. It means that you're awake and you're present. And then you start to notice what needs to happen in this moment. Yeah, maybe I do need to just really enjoy the thing that I'm doing as much as humanly possible. Choose to do it because you're doing it. And paradoxically, when you exercise your choosing muscle and choose to do the thing you're going to do anyway, that choosing muscle gets stronger.
Yeah.
And there comes a moment when you choose to not eat the biscuit or the sugar, and your choosing muscle just, it feels, oh, I can do that.
Yeah.
Because you're staying present and you're staying awake in that moment of discomfort, in those moments where you would normally check out.
For sure. I'm going to try.
I think you're going to be successful. I think as long as you look at it like a practice, and as long as you pretend that you're a beginning student in this realm, in a certain regard, you're taking beginner, relationship with food and body yoga class 101 with yourself.
Yeah.
And you don't have to push yourself to be an expert. You don't have to push yourself to be perfect.
That's my problem.
Yes.
Perfection.
Yes. And that's what life is going to ongoingly ask you to let go of. Perfection belongs to youth in a lot of ways. It belongs to the youngest part of us. And you're entering a different phase of your life where you can't afford to put energy into perfection when its perfection is not forthcoming. Relationships can be messy. Parenthood can be messy. Raising a kid could be messy. Living through COVID times is messy. Living in a country that has certain instabilities, things get messy.
Yeah.
So naturally, perfection ain't happening.
Yeah.
So it's learning to embrace some of the messiness of life. I use messy, you can call it the imperfections. But it's kind of growing out of that old way of seeing things that just doesn't work for you anymore.
Yeah.
At a younger age, perfection can drive us to achievement. At a younger age, perfection can drive us to finding our growing edge. It can drive us to seeing, wow, I can move past my limits. But nobody's perfect. There's no perfect athlete. There's no perfect musician. There's no perfect anybody.
Yeah.
And even if you feel you've hit perfection, you're not going to stay there very long because the body changes, know?
Yep. That's true.
So what would you say are a couple of main takeaways that you're leaving with from this conversation?
Definitely a little bit more acceptance around things that I choose to do or not choose to do, and acceptance of my thoughts and how I go about life. I feel like acceptance in those sort of realms will allow me to eventually accept myself. And yeah, the perfection thing, I mean, I actually like your word messiness, because as soon as you call it an imperfection, it means that there is a perfection at the other side. So I like that. And again, it's a message that I have heard quite over and over. And I feel like the way you framed it tonight, for me, it puts it in a way where I can relate it to something that I personally teach to others. So I feel like the way you've put it to me tonight, I feel a bit more empowered to actually try it for myself, if that makes sense.
Yes, I love it. Mission accomplished for me.
Yay. Thank you.
Denise, I really feel that you have what it takes. You really do. You understand on a level maybe, deeper than you realize how to do the things that are in front of you, and how to learn how to find the comfort within the discomfort, how to find the peace there. And I'm pretty confident that you can really make a change for yourself, and, sooner than you think.
I will honestly give it my all.
I know you will.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your honesty. I appreciate you just opening up and sharing about yourself so freely. And I wish you all the good luck with this.
Thank you, Mark. And I appreciate your time so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. And take care, everybody. More to come.
Hey friends, we're so happy that you've joined us for another episode of The Psychology of Eating with Marc David. Are you loving these episodes? Then simply subscribe and you'll never miss an episode again. We'd also love it if you'd leave us a comment below so we can hear more about your own journey with food and body. And if you're curious about what we offer at the Institute for the Psychology of Eating, including our internationally acclaimed coach certification training that's rooted in dynamic eating psychology and mind-body nutrition, please head on over to our website, psychologyofeating.com. Until next time, take care. And remember, having the body you want starts with loving the body you have.